She was the golden girl of Hollywood.
She was one of the 2 or 3 most talented people that I've seen in my life.
The one who dazzled the screen with her beauty, captivated the world with a smile, and lived a life that seemed pulled straight from the silver screen.
I can be smart when it's important, but most men don't like it.
But behind the glitz and glamour was a fragile heart, an untamed spirit, and secrets that ran deeper than anyone dared to imagine. This is the story of Marilyn Monroe, a legend whose very name conjures images of timeless glamour and stunning looks. Rising from a troubled childhood to the heights of unparalleled fame, she blazed across the golden age of Hollywood, lighting up the screen in unforgettable classics that cemented her status as one of the most iconic actresses of all time.
I believe in improvement.
Yet, Marilyn's stirring performances only hinted at the emotional turmoil bubbling beneath the surface. On a warm August night in 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her bedroom.
One of the most famous stars in Hollywood history is dead at 36. Marilyn Monroe was found dead in bed.
It was originally ruled a suicide, but whispers of conspiracy quickly filled the air. Lovers, politicians, Hollywood elites, everyone was caught in the crosshairs of her untimely end. Was it really an overdose, or something darker? A story tangled in secrecy and scandal. One of Hollywood's greatest mysteries never meant to see the light of day. Through riveting first-hand accounts and rare archival footage, we will peel back the layers of myth and rumor to uncover the woman behind the legend. Her triumphs and tragedies, her joys and sorrows, and the enduring mystery that continues to captivate us all. Join us as we unravel the rise, the heartbreak, and the chilling mystery behind Marilyn Monroe's final moments, and the questions that still haunt us today. On June 1st, 1926, in the bustling heart of Los Angeles, a star was born. Norma Jean Mortensen entered the world at Los Angeles General Hospital, though she would not carry this name for long. Her mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, was a film cutter at RKO Studios, but her struggle with mental health would cast a long shadow over her daughter's life. From the very beginning, young Norma Jean's life was marked by instability and uncertainty. With her mother unable to provide adequate child care, the infant was placed into foster care, setting the stage for a childhood filled with constant upheaval. For the first 7 years of her life, Norma Jean found a sense of stability with her foster parents, Albert and Ida Bolender. Yet, even this period was tinged with the ever-present fact that this happiness wouldn't last long. Her mother, Gladys, would visit her frequently, a reminder to the young girl that her world could change at any moment. At the age of 7, Norma Jean briefly returned to live with her mother. However, this reunion was short-lived. Gladys's mental health continued to deteriorate, resulting in a breakdown that would cause her to be institutionalized. For young Norma Jean, witnessing her mother's struggle and frequent hospitalization was a deeply traumatic experience, one that would leave lasting scars. Due to her mother being institutionalized, Norma Jean once again found herself stuck in the foster care system. She was shuttled from one home to another, each move chipping away at her sense of self-worth and stability. This period of her life was marked not only by neglect, but also by instances of abuse. It was during this unstable period that Norma Jean faced one of the darkest chapters of her young life. In one of her foster homes, at the age of 8, she was sexually abused by a lodger at one of the homes she stayed in. This traumatic experience would have far-reaching consequences, affecting her relationships with men and her sense of self-worth throughout her life. The fear of abandonment and betrayal that took root in these early years would never truly leave her, manifesting as anxiety and depression in her adult life. In September 1935, 9-year-old Norma Jean's journey through the foster care system took her to the Los Angeles Orphans Home Society, known today as Holly Grove. She became the 3,463rd ward of the orphanage, marking the beginning of a 2-year period that would profoundly shape her future. Life at Holly Grove was far from easy. Norma Jean shared a dormitory with 26 other girls, each with their own stories of loss and hardship. Yet it was here, amidst the challenges of orphanage life, that the seeds of Marilyn Monroe's future stardom were planted. From the window of her dormitory, young Norma Jean could see the water tower of the nearby RKO studios. This view became a beacon of hope, fueling her dreams of one day becoming a world-famous movie star. Years later, Marilyn would recall, "I used to think, as I looked at the Hollywood night, there must be thousands of girls sitting alone like me, dreaming of becoming a movie star. But I'm not going to worry about them. I'm dreaming the hardest." Despite the hardships she faced, Norma Jean's resilience began to shine through. During her time at Holly Grove, she attended Vine Street Elementary School, just a few blocks away from the orphanage. Education provided a brief getaway from the challenges of her daily life and offered a glimpse of a world beyond the orphanage walls. Norma Jean's time at Holly Grove came to an end on June 12, 1937, when she was around 11 years old. However, leaving the orphanage did not mark the end of her struggles. Over the next few years, she'd be shuttled between 9 different foster homes. Each move brought new challenges, new faces, and new disappointments. The constant upheaval took its toll on the young girl. The sense of not belonging anywhere became deeply ingrained in her mind, shaping her personality and influencing her relationships for years to come. The radiant smile and vivacious personality that would later captivate millions often hid a deep-seated vulnerability, a fragile heart born out of a childhood marked by instability and trauma. Adding to the complexity of Norma Jean's childhood was the glaring absence of a father figure. Her biological father, later identified through DNA analysis as Charles Stanley Gifford, was never part of her life. This absence left a void that Norma Jean would spend years trying to fill, often seeking validation and love from older men in her adult life. The lack of a stable family unit and the constant shuffling between homes left Norma Jean with a deeply rooted longing for connection and love. This yearning would manifest itself in various ways throughout her life, from her marriages to her relationships with co-stars and powerful men. As Norma Jean approached her teenage years, the desire to escape the foster care system grew stronger. In 1942, at the age of 16, she saw an opportunity for freedom when she met James Dougherty. They officially met when James was 20 years old and working the night shift at Lockheed Aircraft. James was essentially the boy next door when Norma Jean was growing up in Van Nuys, California. Dougherty's family lived next door to Grace and Doc Goddard, who were fostering Norma Jean at the time. After James and Norma Jean married, James was called up to fight in the war, so he arranged for Norma Jean to go live with his parents. While the marriage provided Norma Jean with a way out of the foster care system, it was far from the fairy tale ending she might have hoped for. The relationship was strained from the start, with the young bride struggling to balance her dreams of stardom with the realities of married life. After a while, in 1944, James' mother, Ethel Dougherty, found a job for Norma Jean at the Radio Plane Company factory, aiding in the war effort. It was during this time that Norma Jean's life began to take a dramatic turn. Just a year into working at the factory, she was discovered by a U.S. Army photographer. David Conover was taking photos of female workers at the Radio Plane Company in Burbank, California, to boost morale during World War II. He took several photos of Norma Jean, who worked at the factory, and the attention she received led her to quit her job to pursue modeling. This random encounter with the photographer would set in motion a series of events that would transform Norma Jean Mortensen into the icon the world would come to know today, Marilyn Monroe. As her modeling career began to take off, the constraints of her marriage became increasingly apparent. In 1946, Norma Jean made the difficult decision to divorce Dougherty, choosing to pursue her dreams of stardom over the security of married life. With her newfound freedom, Norma Jean threw herself into building her career. She signed her first movie contract and began the transformation that would captivate the world. She dyed her hair blonde, adopted the breathy voice that would become her trademark, and changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. The transformation was more than skin deep. As Marilyn Monroe, she could reinvent herself, leaving behind the pain and insecurity of Norma Jean's childhood. Yet, as she would discover in the years to come, the scars of her past were not so easily erased. As Marilyn began to rise to stardom, the world was introduced to a woman of extraordinary beauty and charm. Her radiant smile and captivating presence lit up the silver screen, drawing audiences in droves. But beneath the surface, the insecurities and traumas of her childhood continued to simmer, shaping her relationships and influencing her decisions in ways that would ultimately contribute to her tragic downfall. The transformation of Norma Jean into Marilyn Monroe marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one filled with unprecedented fame, love, and scrutiny. As we delve deeper into Marilyn's journey, we'll explore how the scars of her past continued to influence her life, even as she reached the pinnacle of Hollywood stardom. From her high-profile marriages to her struggles with substance abuse and mental health, Marilyn's story is one of triumph and tragedy, a cautionary tale of the price of fame and the enduring impact of childhood trauma. The early 1950s marked a pivotal period in Marilyn Monroe's career, as she transitioned from a struggling actress to one of Hollywood's brightest stars. However, this journey was far from smooth, filled with challenges, personal growth, and the constant battle against being cast as merely another pretty face. Marilyn found herself fighting an uphill battle in Hollywood. Despite her undeniable beauty and charisma, many in the industry were quick to dismiss her as just another blonde bombshell, lacking the depth and talent necessary for serious acting roles. This perception was not entirely based purely on her looks. Marilyn's early performances were often criticized for being one-dimensional, relying heavily on her physical attributes rather than her acting skills. She was frequently cast in roles that emphasized her sex appeal, reinforcing the stereotype that she was thought to be the perfect eye candy for male audiences. However, beneath the glamorous exterior, Marilyn harbored a burning desire to be taken seriously as an actress. She was acutely aware of her limitations and was determined to overcome them. This drive led her to make a decision that would profoundly impact her career and life. She decided to begin studying acting with Lee Strasberg, the father of method acting, at the prestigious Actors Studio in New York. Marilyn's enrollment at the Actors Studio in 1955 marked a turning point in her career. Under the arms of Strasberg, she began to develop her craft in earnest. Strasberg's approach, which emphasized emotional truth and drawing from personal experiences, resonated deeply with Marilyn. The actress threw herself into her studies with intensity to bring something special to her characters. She attended classes religiously, often arriving early and staying late to work on her technique. Her fellow students and instructors were initially skeptical of her presence, assuming she was there merely for publicity. However, Marilyn quickly proved them wrong with her dedication and willingness to be vulnerable in her performances. Strasberg himself was impressed by Marilyn's commitment and raw talent. He once remarked,
She was one of the 2 or 3 most sensitive and most talented people that I've seen in my life. One of the others is Marlon Brando, for instance. And to me, she had the same kind of sensitivity.
This period of intense study had a profound effect on Marilyn's approach to acting. She began to delve deeper into her characters, seeking to understand their motivations and emotions. This newfound depth would soon become evident in her on-screen performances, surprising many who had previously dismissed her as just a sex symbol. As Marilyn honed her craft, her career began to take off in spectacular fashion. The years 1953 to 1955 saw her star in a string of successful films that would cement her status as a Hollywood icon. In 1953, Marilyn starred in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes alongside Jane Russell. Her portrayal of the gold-digging showgirl Lorelei Lee showcased not only her comedic timing, but also her ability to command the screen. The film's signature musical number, Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, became one of the most iconic moments in cinema history.
Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
With Marilyn's pink dress and dazzling performance etching themselves into the collective cultural memory. This was quickly followed by How to Marry a Millionaire, released in 1953, where Marilyn held her own against established stars Betty Grable and Lauren Bacall. Her performance as Paula Debevoise demonstrated her growing range as an actress, blending physical comedy with her traditional sensuality. However, it was The 7-Year Itch, released in 1955, that truly catapulted Marilyn to stardom. The image of her standing over a subway grate, her white dress flying up around her, became one of the most recognizable and captivating images of the 20th century. The film's success solidified Marilyn's position as America's premier sex symbol and one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. But of course, even this success came with a dark side. The infamous skirt-blowing scene was filmed as a publicity stunt on September 15, 1954, in New York City. The studio deliberately created a public event by inviting the press and informing them when and where the scene would be shot. They also made sure people knew Marilyn would be wearing an outfit that would stop traffic, causing around 2,000 spectators to gather around and watch the filming of this scene. The final shot was actually filmed in a Hollywood soundstage, but having to reshoot multiple times left Marilyn not only feeling uncomfortable, but also having to expose herself over and over again. As Marilyn's professional life soared, her personal life was marked by toxic relationships and a search for stability. In 1954, at the height of her fame, she married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. The idea of America's blonde bombshell and its greatest living sports hero seemed like a match made in heaven. However, the marriage was full of difficulties from the start. DiMaggio, raised in a traditional Italian-American family, struggled with Marilyn's sex symbol status and the constant attention she received. He was particularly infuriated by the famous subway grate scene in The 7-Year Itch, and at the fact that Marilyn did the scene in front of so many people. The marriage ultimately only lasted 9 months, with Marilyn filing divorce in October 1954, saying that DiMaggio was mentally abusive. Despite the shortness of their marriage, DiMaggio remained a significant figure in Marilyn's life, often coming to her aid in times of trouble. In 1956, Marilyn embarked on what would be her third and final marriage, to playwright Arthur Miller. This union represented a significant shift in Marilyn's personal and professional life. Miller, an intellectual and respected artist, seemed to offer Marilyn the stability and depth she craved. The marriage initially appeared to be a positive influence on Marilyn. She converted to Judaism, Miller's faith, and seemed to find a sense of peace and belonging. However, as time went on, cracks began to appear in their relationship. Despite her immense success and growing recognition as a serious actress, Marilyn continued to battle with deep-seated insecurities. Her difficult childhood, marked by abandonment and abuse, had left lasting scars that fame and fortune could not erase. These insecurities manifested in various ways, most notably in her chronic tardiness on set. Marilyn's lateness became legendary in Hollywood, often causing significant delays in production and frustrating her co-stars and directors. What many failed to realize was that this behavior stemmed from intense anxiety and self-doubt rather than lazy attitudes. Marilyn's perfectionism also contributed to her tardiness. She would often spend hours preparing for a scene, obsessing over every detail of a performance. This meticulousness, while coming from a good place, often led to exhaustion and further anxiety. Her insecurities also affected her personal relationships. Despite her image as a confident sex symbol, Marilyn often felt deeply inadequate, particularly in her marriage to Arthur Miller. She worried that she wasn't intellectual enough for him and that he would eventually grow bored of her. As the pressures of fame and her personal struggles mounted, Marilyn began to rely increasingly on alcohol and prescription drugs to cope. This dependence would have devastating consequences for both her career and her personal life. Marilyn's use of barbiturates and amphetamines, initially prescribed to help with her chronic insomnia and anxiety, spiraled into addiction. She would often combine these drugs with alcohol, creating a dangerous cocktail that affected her behavior and work. The effects of her substance abuse became increasingly apparent on set. Her tardiness worsened, and she often appeared disoriented or had difficulty remembering her lines. This led to further delays in production and strained relationships with her co-stars and directors. Despite attempts at intervention by friends and colleagues, Marilyn's dependence on drugs and alcohol continued to escalate. This struggle would persist throughout the remainder of her career, contributing to her declining mental health and ultimately playing a role in her untimely death. As the 1950s drew to a close, Marilyn Monroe stood at a crossroads. She had achieved unparalleled fame and success, transforming herself from a struggling actress into one of the most recognizable faces in the world. Her performances in films like Some Like It Hot from 1959 had demonstrated her growth as an actress and her ability to tackle more complex roles. However, the cracks in her carefully constructed facade were beginning to show. Her marriage to Arthur Miller was under strain. Her battles with substance abuse were intensifying, and the pressure to maintain her image as America's sex symbol was taking its toll. As she entered the new decade, Marilyn faced new challenges and opportunities. The 1960s would bring significant changes to both Hollywood and American society at large. For Marilyn, it would be a period of both triumph and tragedy, as she sought to redefine herself in a changing world while grappling with her personal demons. The story of Marilyn Monroe in the 1960s is one of suspicion. It holds themes of conspiracies and personal struggles. It's a tale that would ultimately lead to one of Hollywood's greatest tragedies, but also cement Marilyn's status as an enduring cultural icon. As the 60s dawned, Marilyn Monroe found herself at the intersection of Hollywood glamour and political intrigue. Her alleged affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert Kennedy became the subject of intense speculation, placing her at the center of a web of rumors and conspiracy theories that persist to this day. Marilyn's association with the Kennedy family reportedly began in the 1950s, but it was in the early 1960s that her relationships with John and Robert Kennedy allegedly intensified. While the exact nature and extent of these relationships remain a matter of debate, they undoubtedly had a significant impact on Marilyn's life and legacy. According to various accounts, Marilyn and JFK had several encounters, including a weekend at Bing Crosby's Palm Springs home in March 1962. These meetings were said to be arranged with the help of the president's brother-in-law, Peter Lawford, who was also a close friend of Marilyn's. Robert Kennedy was also rumored to have become close to Marilyn during this period. Some sources suggest that their relationship was more emotional than physical, with Robert offering Marilyn the intellectual connection and understanding she craved. However, as Marilyn's alleged involvement with the Kennedys deepened, rumors began to circulate that she had become knowledgeable of sensitive government information. Some of the more sensational claims suggested that she'd learned about UFOs and other classified subjects through her conversations with the president and his brother. While these claims remain in question, they've fueled decades of speculation and conspiracy theories. Some theorists have even suggested that Marilyn's knowledge of state secrets may have played a role in her untimely death. On May 19, 1962, Marilyn delivered what would become one of the most iconic performances of her career. At a Democratic fundraiser held at Madison Square Garden to celebrate President Kennedy's 45th birthday, Marilyn took to the stage in a skin-tight, rhinestone-studded dress designed by Jean Louis. Her breathy rendition of Happy Birthday to the President caused a sensation.
Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
The performance was witnessed by 15,000 attendees and millions more who saw it on television or in newsreels. Marilyn's dress was so tight that she had to be sewn into it, adding to the overall allure of her seductive performance. The event marked a pivotal moment in Marilyn's life and career. It publicly linked her to the president in a way that fueled rumors about their relationship. Kennedy's reaction to the performance was nonchalant. He made a joke saying that he could now retire from politics after having had happy birthday sung to me in such a sweet, wholesome way.
I can now retire from politics after having had happy birthday sung to me in such a sweet, wholesome way.
This only added more fuel to speculations surrounding the affair. In the summer of 1962, Marilyn began work on what was to be her final film, Something's Gotta Give. From the start, the production was plagued with problems, many stemming from Marilyn's increasingly erratic behavior. Marilyn's chronic tardiness and frequent absences from the set caused significant delays and frustrations. She often arrived hours late, if she even arrived at all. And when she did appear, she sometimes struggled to remember her lines or deliver them coherently. Her behavior was attributed to a combination of factors, including her worsening dependency on prescription drugs, personal troubles, and ongoing health issues. The situation came to a stop when Marilyn took time off from filming to fly to New York to perform at President Kennedy's birthday gala. Upon her return, she called in sick for several days, further delaying production. And then, on June 8, 1962, after weeks of delays and mounting costs, 20th Century Fox made the decision to fire Marilyn from the film. But oddly, in a surprising turn of events, the studio rehired her after just a month. This time, they were offering her a new contract with a higher salary and more creative control. This decision was seen as a victory for Marilyn, but it would prove to be short-lived. Despite her new contract, Marilyn's personal struggles continued to intensify. Her dependency on prescription drugs, which had been a long-standing issue, worsened significantly during this period. Marilyn had long suffered from insomnia and anxiety, conditions for which she'd been prescribed various medications like barbiturates and amphetamines. These medications, while providing temporary relief, often exacerbated her mental health issues and contributed to her erratic behavior. As the sun set on that Saturday evening of August 4th, Marilyn Monroe was alone in her modest hacienda-style home at 12305 5th Helena Drive in Brentwood, Los Angeles. The day had been relatively uneventful, with Monroe spending most of it at home, making phone calls and receiving visitors. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, was present, as she had been for much of the day. She reportedly spoke on the phone with several people, including her stepson, Joe DiMaggio Jr., and her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson. In the afternoon, her publicist, Patricia Newcomb, visited her. According to Newcomb, Marilyn seemed tired but in good spirits. But one of the most intriguing and controversial elements of that evening is the reported sighting of an ambulance at Monroe's home. Several witnesses, including neighbors and people passing by the area, claim to have seen an ambulance parked outside the actress's residence sometime between 6 and 8 p.m. of that evening. This alleged sighting has been a cornerstone of many conspiracy theories surrounding Monroe's death. Some speculate that the ambulance was called to treat Monroe for a drug overdose, only to have her recover temporarily. Others suggest that it was part of a cover-up operation, perhaps to remove evidence or even Monroe herself from the scene. However, official records show no ambulance dispatch to Monroe's address during those hours. Skeptics argue that the witnesses might have confused the date or location, or that the memory of seeing an ambulance was influenced by later knowledge of Monroe's death. But despite these doubts, the ambulance sighting remains a persistent and intriguing element of the night's events. But perhaps the most controversial claim regarding that night is the alleged visit of Robert F. Kennedy, the U.S. Attorney General and brother of President John F. Kennedy. Several sources, including Monroe's neighbors and even her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, have suggested that Robert Kennedy visited Monroe's home on the evening of August 4th. The implications of such a visit are profound. Monroe was rumored to have had affairs with both Kennedy brothers, and some theories suggest that she was threatening to go public with details of these relationships. A visit from Robert Kennedy on the night of her death could indicate a confrontation or an attempt to silence her. However, Robert Kennedy and his supporters always denied any such visit. Official records place Kennedy in Northern California with his family on August 4th, seemingly making it impossible for him to have been in Los Angeles that evening. Despite this, the persistent rumors of his presence have become a central element in many conspiracy theories surrounding Monroe's death. Why do neighbors claim to have seen him? Why did the housekeeper claim to have seen him? As the night wore on, the events at 5th Helena Drive took a tragic turn. The generally accepted timeline of events begins in the early hours of August 5th, although this timeline is subject to dispute and contradiction. This is the alleged story. At approximately 3 a.m., Marilyn Monroe's housekeeper, Eunice Murray, awoke with what she later described as an uneasy feeling. She noticed a light still on in Monroe's bedroom that she could see under the door. When she knocked, there was no answer. Upon trying to open the door, she discovered it was locked. Murray's account of these moments has been scrutinized intensely over the years. In her initial statements to the police, she claimed to have been asleep up until this point. However, in later years, her story changed. In a 1985 BBC interview, she admitted that Robert Kennedy had visited the house earlier that evening, and that there had been an argument between the two. This late revelation has added fuel to conspiracy theories and raised questions about the reliability of the official timeline. Was she actually asleep? Or was she afraid of what would happen if she told the truth? The original story continues by saying she was unable to rouse Monroe or enter her room. Eunice Murray called Dr. Ralph Greenson, Monroe's psychiatrist. Greenson arrived at the house at approximately 3:30 a.m. Finding the bedroom door locked, he reportedly broke into the room through a window. Upon entering, Greenson found Monroe lying face down on her bed, nude and unresponsive. Some reports even say she was found with her hand lying on the phone, almost as if it was a call for help. He checked her vital signs, but could not find any, pronouncing her dead. The scene, as described by Greenson, included an empty bottle of Nebutol capsules on the bedside table, along with multiple other medications. Greenson's role in the events of that night have also been scrutinized extensively. As Monroe's psychiatrist, he had intimate knowledge of her mental state and was prescribing her medication. Some theories suggest that Greenson may have been more deeply involved in Monroe's life than what was appropriate for a doctor-patient relationship. Questions have been raised about why Greenson broke into Monroe's room through a window rather than calling for emergency services immediately. Some have also speculated about whether Greenson might have been involved in administering the fatal dose of barbiturates, either accidentally or intentionally. He'd been treating her for depression and had prescribed her various medications. So if anyone could get close to her, wouldn't it be him? It wasn't until 4:25 a.m. that the Los Angeles Police Department was officially notified of Monroe's death. This delay of nearly an hour between Greenson's arrival and the police notification has raised questions and fueled suspicions of a potential cover-up. The call to the police was made by Dr. Hyman Engelberg, Monroe's personal physician, who'd been summoned to the scene by Dr. Greenson. Engelberg reportedly told the police, "Marilyn Monroe has died. She's committed suicide." The immediate declaration of suicide, before any official investigation had been conducted, has been a point of suspicion for those who believe Monroe's death was not self-inflicted. The events surrounding Marilyn Monroe's death are filled with inconsistencies, contradictions, and suspicious circumstances that have fueled decades of speculation and conspiracy theories. One of the most glaring issues with the official account of Monroe's death is the numerous discrepancies in the timeline. Different witnesses have provided conflicting accounts of when certain events occurred. and some have changed their stories over time. For instance, the time of Monroe's death has been disputed. While the official time of death was recorded at 3:50 a.m. on August 5, some evidence suggests that she may have died much earlier. Police Sergeant Jack Clemens, who was the first officer on the scene, later claimed that when he arrived, rigor mortis had already set in, indicating that Monroe had been dead for several hours. These timeline discrepancies have led many to question whether there was an attempt to cover up the true sequence of events on that fateful night. The statements provided by key witnesses, particularly the housekeeper Eunice Murray, have been inconsistent and have changed over time. Murray's initial account of the evening's events differed significantly from statements she made years later, particularly regarding Robert Kennedy's alleged visit. These inconsistencies have led many to question the reliability of the official narrative and have fueled speculation about what really happened on the night of Monroe's death. Ultimately, the coroner's report was released on October 17, 1962. It concluded that Marilyn Monroe's death was a probable suicide caused by an overdose of barbiturates. The toxicology report revealed a blood concentration of 8 milligrams of chloral hydrate and 4.5 milligrams of Nembutal. These levels were several times the lethal limit. Dr. Thomas Noguchi, who performed the autopsy, noted that there were no signs of physical violence or struggle on Monroe's body. He also found no evidence of substances being forcibly administered. The presence of Nembutal residue in her digestive system suggested that the drugs had been ingested orally. But interestingly, no yellow marks were found in her stomach, which some investigators expected to see if Nembutal had been ingested that way. The official report stated that several factors led to the ruling of suicide, such as Monroe's history of mental health issues and previous suicide attempts. The coroner's report mentioned that Monroe had often expressed wishes to give up, to withdraw, and even to die. And on more than one occasion in the past, she had made a suicide attempt using sedative drugs. On these occasions, she'd called for help and had been rescued. The report suggests there was a pattern of Monroe taking sedative drugs and then calling for help in hopes of someone coming to help her, which was repeated on the night of her death, except this time, the rescue never showed up. Her reported depression and erratic behavior in the weeks leading up to her death were also attributed to the ruling. However, the use of the term probable in the official ruling has fueled speculation and doubt. Critics argue that if the evidence for suicide was so conclusive, then the term probable would not have been necessary. Despite the official ruling, numerous conspiracy theories have emerged over the years, challenging the suicide narrative and proposing alternative explanations for Monroe's death. These theories range from murder plots involving high-profile figures to accidental overdoses covered up by powerful interests. One of the most sensational conspiracy theories suggests that Monroe was murdered to prevent her from disclosing sensitive government information, including details about UFOs and extraterrestrial life. Proponents of this theory point to Monroe's alleged relationships with both President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Robert F. Kennedy. They argue that through these connections, Monroe had become privy to classified information about various government secrets. This is where we introduce the CIA memo. In the 1990s, decades after Monroe's death, a document claiming to be a CIA memo surfaced, suggesting that Monroe had threatened to hold a press conference to reveal top government information about UFOs that she had learned from the Kennedy brothers. The memo details a wiretapped phone conversation in which Monroe threatened to hold a press conference to reveal sensitive information about UFOs and alien bodies recovered from crash sites, particularly the Roswell crash in the summer of 1947, where 3 alien bodies were supposedly recovered along with their craft. The authenticity of this document has been widely disputed. It was allegedly discovered by UFO researcher Donald Burleson, and while many researchers considered the memo to be a forgery, created to sensationalize Monroe's death and connect it to the UFO conspiracies, others believe it's 100% the truth. Even Dr. Stephen Greer, UFOologist, believes Monroe had a deep connection with the Kennedys and their secrets. Some theories suggest Monroe knew about an alien treaty, supposedly signed during the Eisenhower administration, which involved the United States secretly working with extraterrestrials in exchange for knowledge and technology to defeat the Soviet Union. It's important to note that these claims are part of conspiracy theories that are not supported by credible evidence. And to this day, there's been no official confirmation from the CIA about whether the memo is legit or not. But why the silence? If it's not real, why not just come out and say that? Oddly enough, the memo is dated just days before Monroe's death, which many people see as suspicious. And then there's the Little Red Diary. Some claim that Monroe kept a diary containing sensitive information about her conversations with the Kennedys, including the details about the UFOs and government cover-ups. The idea of Monroe's Little Red Diary was first popularized by Robert Slater in his 1974 book, The Life and Curious Death of Marilyn Monroe. Slater claimed to have been briefly married to Monroe and to have seen this diary. He said that it detailed Monroe's relationships with the Kennedy brothers, government secrets, and details about Monroe's personal life and thoughts. Although there's no concrete physical evidence of this diary that we know of, many people have theories as to what happened to it. Some claim that the diary was removed from Monroe's home shortly after her death, while others suggest it was taken from the coroner's office. The idea of a missing diary containing sensitive information has fueled various conspiracy theories about Monroe's death and her relationships with powerful figures. Some sources claim to have seen or heard excerpts from the diary, but these alleged quotes often seem inconsistent with Monroe's known writing style and interests. Despite the lack of evidence, the idea of Monroe's Little Red Diary continues to captivate the public imagination and is a prominent figure in discussions about her life and death. Another prominent conspiracy theory suggests that the CIA was directly involved in Monroe's death to protect national security interests. This theory often intersects with the previous one, but focuses more on the alleged actions of the intelligence agency. One of the key aspects of this theory includes something that may sound familiar: Operation Mongoose, a covert CIA program aimed at overthrowing Fidel Castro's government in Cuba. Operation Mongoose was active from November 1961 to October 1962, strangely coinciding with the final year of Monroe's death. The operation was reportedly overseen by Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. Coincidence? You tell me. Theories suggest that she may have learned about the plan to overthrow Fidel Castro while hanging out with RFK in what they thought was privacy. This is how the supposed UFO information was given to her also. Proponents of this theory argue that Monroe's knowledge of the operation made her a potential security risk, especially if she were to reveal information to the press or others, leading to certain parties wanting to have her silenced. It's important to note that there's no true evidence linking Monroe to Operation Mongoose or suggesting she had any specific knowledge of it, but it's claimed that the CIA had Monroe under surveillance due to her connections with the Kennedys and her alleged sympathies for left-wing causes. Some argue that this surveillance led to the decision to eliminate her as a potential threat. Some even claim that the CIA sought to recover or destroy her red diary to prevent the disclosure of the sensitive information, believing that all the information is behind these pages. Critics of this theory point out that there's no concrete evidence of CIA involvement in Monroe's death. They argue that the agency had no motive to kill such a high-profile figure and that doing so would have posed significant risks of exposure. A less sensational but still controversial theory suggests that Monroe's death was an accidental overdose that was staged to appear as a suicide. This theory often involves Monroe's doctors and other individuals close to her, such as Monroe's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who's been a central figure in many conspiracy theories. Some argue that Greenson accidentally gave Monroe a fatal dose of barbiturates, possibly through an enema, and then staged the scene to look like a suicide. Some first responders even reported that the death scene appeared to have been cleaned or staged before their arrival. This has fueled speculation about a cover-up of an accidental death. But of course, perhaps the most persistent conspiracy theory surrounding Monroe's death involves, of course, the Kennedy family, particularly Robert F. Kennedy. This theory suggests that Monroe was murdered to prevent her from exposing her affairs with both John and Robert Kennedy, which could have caused a major political scandal. As we discussed, Eunice Murray claimed that RFK visited Monroe's home on the day of her death, although Kennedy and his supporters always denied this. Proponents of this theory argue that Monroe was threatening to go public with the details of her affairs with the Kennedy brothers, possibly at the same press conference that she would expose UFOs and Project Mongoose. Theorists claim that this threat led to the decision to silence her permanently. This takes us to Peter Lawford, a British-American actor and member of the Rat Pack. He's prominently featured in several conspiracy theories surrounding Marilyn Monroe's death. On the night of August 4th, 1962, Peter Lawford reportedly made the last phone call to Marilyn Monroe. During this call, Monroe allegedly sounded disoriented and under the influence of drugs. She's said to have told Lawford, "Say goodbye to Pat, say goodbye to the president, and say goodbye to yourself, because you're a nice guy," before drifting off. This cryptic message has been interpreted by some as a farewell or a cry for help. It's claimed that the phone records from Monroe's house on the night of her death were seized or destroyed, possibly to conceal calls to or from the Kennedys. Lawford was brother-in-law to John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, having married their sister Patricia. This connection places him at the center of theories involving the Kennedys' alleged affairs with Monroe. One version claims that Monroe was found alive but died en route to the hospital. Lawford, along with Robert Kennedy, allegedly conspired with medical personnel and officials to hide the true circumstances of her death. But some of the most sensational claims come from Lawford's ex-wives, particularly Deborah Gould, who was married to him for only 2 months. Gould claimed Lawford had confessed details about Monroe's relationships with the Kennedys during a drunken episode. Lawford then wakes up from his drunken binge and told me that I should forget everything he says. Gould then claims to have found a mysterious photograph that has never come to life. She claims it showed Peter Lawford, Marilyn Monroe, and Bobby Kennedy. They were all arm in arm. As I recall, Marilyn had a robe on and was holding a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne. It looked like they were all having a wonderful time. They were at the beach. While the Peter Lawford theory continues to captivate the public imagination, it remains one of many unproven conspiracy theories surrounding the tragic death of Marilyn Monroe. There are also conspiracies about more wiretapping going on that was previously believed. Bernard Spindle, an expert wiretapper, claimed to have bugged Monroe's house. He alleged that he heard Lawford, along with Robert Kennedy, fighting with Monroe on the night of her death, followed by a loud bang. The actual recordings have never been made public, but Spindle alleged that the recordings were seized and destroyed in 1966, making verification impossible. Fred Otash, a private investigator, also claimed to have wiretapped Monroe's home. Otash reportedly had a wiretapping system as sophisticated as those used by the LAPD and FBI, supposedly learning details of Monroe's final day through the wiretaps, including another mention of an alleged encounter with Robert Kennedy. Although these people have claimed to have proof, they never publicly came forward with actual tapes. Were they scared of what would happen? Or were they just trying to get in the spotlight? While the wiretapping allegations continue to captivate public interest, it's important to note that they remain unproven and controversial. But one of the most morbid conspiracies surrounding Marilyn Monroe's death is what happened to her body on the way to the morgue. It reportedly took about 4 to 6 hours from her body to arrive at the morgue, a journey that should have only taken around 45 minutes. Some conspiracy theorists claim that a secret society of necrophiliacs intercepted Monroe's body during transport to the morgue. Dr. Thomas Noguchi, who performed the autopsy, claimed that materials from Monroe's stomach and intestines had been destroyed. Some rumors go as far to claim that the morgue staff also engaged in necrophilic acts with Monroe's body. These theories, while intriguing, represent some of the most extreme and unsupported ideas surrounding Marilyn Monroe's death. Although there's no evidence supporting any of these claims, the overwhelming amount of attention that they receive cannot be ignored. In the end, Marilyn Monroe's life and death remain shrouded in mystery, as if her very spirit lingers in the whispers and shadows cast by her legendary legacy. She was more than just a radiant face upon the silver screen or a symbol of unparalleled beauty. She was a complex, resilient woman who wrestled with profound personal demons, both in private and in the glare of the public spotlight. Marilyn's life embodied the intoxicating glitz and glamour of Hollywood's golden age. Yet behind the camera, she was subject to battles with mental health, toxic relationships, and the immense pressures of fame that few could truly understand. The lingering questions surrounding her untimely demise have kept her legacy alive in a hauntingly captivating way, fueling decades of speculation and fascination. Did Marilyn's life end as a tragic accident, or was there something more sinister at play? Was she silenced due to her associations with powerful figures? Or was she simply another tragic casualty of an industry that shines a spotlight on its brightest stars, only to offer no help in their darkest hours? Her death may forever remain shrouded in mystery, but what is clear is the undeniable mark she left on American culture. Perhaps Marilyn Monroe's spirit still lingers on, not just as an iconic symbol of Hollywood, but as a question that may never be fully answered.